Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Anchor Church podcast. This is the conversational piece that we have with me and Tyler talking about sermons. This is the first one where it's a little different for both of us because I'm up in at an elders retreat. We're talking about church life, and Tyler's actually doing this first one from Sunshine Acres. So we're making it all work. It took us a little bit of time here to kind of get figured out how we're going to do this from where we're at. So if I sound a little weird or if something's going on, that's kind of why. But Tyler, welcome from Sunshine Acres. Welcome to the Anchor Conversations podcast.
Yeah, thank you. I guess welcome anyone who watches a clip of this later on YouTube. Welcome to Sunshine Acres. This is my living room at Sunshine Acres.
Nice. Here you are. It's a little dark. This is just we're doing this at night today,
Yeah.
so we're trying to figure out the best time to make this one work. But um, so darker than normal. You see Tyler nice and bright, but like we said a couple weeks ago, I think his the podcast studio at his old house is no longer a podcast studio for him. Now he's doing this out of his living room at Sunshine Acres. So, um, hey man, we're just really grateful that you're still able to jump on these weekly, though. That's good to see your face and to hear your voice. So,
Yeah, I'm glad it's working out so far. And yeah, it's a bummer to not have the podcast studio where I could just shut the door and have some privacy and a quiet conversation. I don't have that here. It's a little bit of a smaller house, so
yeah,
uh but we're making it work. So
good.
Um, all good stuff.
Well, it's good to have you. If you're watching this too, and you realize that it's just a picture of my face, sorry about that. I'm at a place where we have Wi-Fi and stuff, but I just want to make sure we don't cut out. So this is just not my normal setup either. So we're gonna make do today, and we just want to make sure we get the content to you, and really follow up on the sermon from this past week, because we still are in the one more series. And Tyler, you preached this last week from First Corinthians 12:31 through 13:3. Um, and your big idea was love is our one more motivation. We think about kind of living a one more life, and the question that we're trying to wrestle with is what should motivate us? What's the right motives and the wrong motives for us to be living this kind of lifestyle? And love is kind of where we landed. I wonder, we think about right or wrong motives. I wonder what are some wrong motives? Like if we think about our own evangelism, and maybe even as we think about evangelism being something that we're scared of or something that we don't know how to process or do, like I wonder if some of that comes from wrong motives. Like we just think about it wrongly. What maybe as you even thought about love being the proper motive, did it come up like as you were studying for that, did it maybe come across your desk or your mind like, okay, these are the motives that we shouldn't have, or maybe these are some of the motives that would be misplaced?
Yeah, I mean, I think in the context of 1 Corinthians 13, there he mentions boasting, and I think that's in particular to that verse 3, if I give up my body in order to boast, really all of those spiritual gifts, values that Paul is highlighting as if I have these things without love, that they're useless. All of them would have been reasons for the Corinthian church or those in the Corinthian church to boast, to say, "Look at me, I am important because I speak in tongues, or I am important because I prophesy, or I am important because I'm generous." Um, or anything else. So I really think, anything that we would that would tempt us or cause us to boast. So, like for a church, a bad motive would be, well, we want to be one more minded so that we can look and go, look how many people got saved at our church. Like it adds some sort of validation or importance or something to us. For pastors especially, look how many people I baptized this year. You and I have both been around pastors who, you hope the motives are good there, but it seems like it's a bit of a badge of honor almost, which it's a fine line because you do want to rejoice in baptisms, you do want to rejoice in your one more becoming a Christian, certainly a reason to rejoice. But the question is like why? Why am I rejoicing? Because it makes me look great, it makes me look important, or because of the merits of a new life being, or a life being brought from death to life. So I think, boasting, anything that would just cause pride to swell. But I don't think that. So that's like, if you are missional and you are inviting people and you are living on mission, that could be a bad motive that you could have. I think more often the motivation is comfort, and that's why we don't evangelize. It's why we don't pursue our one more, because the motivation is that we would be comfortable, that we would be liked, that things wouldn't be awkward, um, or like the motivation is, our motivations are just in other places. So we're too busy thinking about our career, our family, all these important things that we have going on, our house, the next vacation. We're just too busy focused on all these other things, and that's where the motivation is in our lives, is to run after those things, rather than be a missionary, rather than being someone who's thinking about Jesus and others. Because our mind, we only have so much bandwidth, right? We only have so much capacity. We can't do it all. We have to decide that mission is a priority, or else we're just not going to do it. So we could have motivations that are after other things, or motivations to just be comfortable or not awkward or well liked. And all of those would be reasons why that's kind of the other side of the coin that I talked about in the sermon. Reasons why we don't evangelize, reasons why we don't live on mission, would also be a motivation problem, as well. So I don't know if you
Mm.
had any other stuff that came to mind for you with that.
No, I don't. I think that that's good. I think that that's all um you know I think as we think about that, even it's interesting to think about evangelism or sharing our faith. Peter and I on the One More podcast, we're talking about a better way to phrase evangelism is sharing our faith with others. Um, so like even as we think about that, sharing our faith with others, you sometimes you get you want to share your faith with others so you can date someone. You feel like missionary dating.
Guilty as charged.
Yeah, I know. I was like, that's my story with Lindsay. Um,
It is.
okay. So good. I didn't think about that. Hey kids, don't listen to that. That's not a good it's not
Do as I
helpful.
say, not as I do.
So true. Um, but like I think that you have some motivations like that. I think what you hit on is the proper motivation. Actually, I think what you hit on in terms of love is the only motivation that will stand the test of ups and downs in life and time. So even you mentioned at the very beginning, which I think kind of speaks to this a little bit, that you can feel both excited and kind of guilty when we talk about, you know, living a one more life. And I think we all kind of resonate with that because motivations go up and down. Sometimes the motivation, if we're hitting it in the wrong way, we could feel guilty. We could feel like bored. But if we're doing it because we recognize that God loved us enough to essentially come on a rescue mission for us, and that's kind of what we're trying to do for others. I think it changes a little bit of how we process through it. I also wanted to just maybe ask a couple questions to that end about the idea of love being absent. Um, if we're trying to live any type of the Christian life, I think, and love is not there from First Corinthians 12 and 13. You talked about like the math that doesn't add up there. It adds up to something that's not desirable. Love's math being we gain nothing, we have nothing, we're kind of annoying. We're I thought that was super helpful. A clanging gong or a cymbal, like something that's just kind of for a while you go, man, can somebody stop hitting that? Like my kids, somebody one time bought us when our kids were little, bought them for Christmas a bell set. This was a single guy. A bells, like a thing of bells, and we were like, dude, come on, man, like this is not what we're looking for. Um, I just wanted to maybe hit that a little bit more from you, like what is it about? the lovelessness that creates in us, I think, both desires and motivations that are wrong, but also an annoying clanging sound. As somebody's, maybe you're listening to this right now, you're driving, you're on a run, you're doing something, and you're thinking, man, I don't want to be annoying. How do we think about that? You mentioned this in your sermon a little bit. How do we think about that in terms of just growing in our love for others so that we don't become annoying? How do we grow in those things?
Yeah, I think about it like, yeah, I talked a little bit about football on Sunday. So, my favorite team is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and a few years back, we had this quarterback who had a season where he threw like 50 touchdown passes and like 50 interceptions in the season, which 50 touchdown passes is amazing. If you know football, you know, wow, 50, that's amazing. 50 interceptions is horrible. And so everyone who's a Buccaneers fan is kind of annoyed by this guy because we go, dude, your job is to throw touchdown passes. To your job is to complete passes to guys wearing Buccaneers jerseys, and you are throwing passes to the other team. Like that's obnoxious. That's annoying. You're not living as you are designed to live out on the football field. And I think the same is true. We think about the Christian life. When we are selfish, when we are distracted, because we're just too enamored with what we have going on, I think the annoyance kind of comes from like, this isn't who you're made to be. So I think that there is like an aspect of, just a when we don't live as we're made to be, like there's an annoyance. I think that's why, sometimes people will be like, "Wow, what is going on with Christians? They just they don't like it doesn't add up. The math doesn't add up for them because they have these stories of who God is. They have these sermons about the love of God and the goodness of God, and then they look at Christians and they go, Christians on Twitter or whatever. Maybe it is a Christian that they know in real life, and they're like, dude, you're a jerk. This doesn't add up. That's annoying. So yeah, it's kind of where the annoyance comes. Like a way to think about that anyway is you're not living as you were designed. You're not operating in your job, your role. You're doing something that's contrary or opposite, and that's just annoying. It's not how it's supposed to be.
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
so there's an annoyance with that. There's a second half of that question that I'm probably missing though.
No, no, I think that's good. I wonder, like when you're talking about Twitter, social media, even maybe some of the bravado that I think we can have as Christians that we're right. There's something about truth that I think should lead us to be humble, but I wonder if sometimes we look at true things about the Lord and we hold theology in such a way where actually it leads to us being more haughty or proud about it. Like somehow we have the inside track, and so we're right. So we talk to non. And maybe I got maybe a great illustration. This would be somebody that would just believe another religion. Believe in. We're trying to share our faith with them. Sometimes I think it can come across like I can't wait to one up this guy or girl and show them how stupid they are, because we have the truth instead of, and which is not love motivated. I think we can convince ourselves that it is because we're like, man, me being like, I'm gonna be the brave crusader here and just really put this person in their place. But I wonder if love actually in that situation would look more like a humility to try and engage with somebody over time and not just in a small conversation, to where I get the gotcha text and they walk away feeling like an idiot, which doesn't really point them to Jesus, I don't think. I don't know. I was wondering about that when you were talking on Sunday. I just thought, how are we in our faith sharing with others coming across? Do we come across as those who genuinely in love care about um, the missionary that comes to our door, somebody, who believes in Islam, somebody who's just wondering about the faith, Jesus, and trying to figure it all out. Do we come at that humbly? I wonder if like love leads to humility. I don't know. Any thoughts on that? I was as you were talking on Sunday, I wrote a couple notes down that like that way about just our own personal, attempts to win others with Christ, especially that would believe pretty strong things about different religions.
Yeah, I mean, I think love, um, again, if we're going to hold up the kind of biblical definition and example of love, love is inherently humble. Um, it- Pride and love don't mix. They're, salt and or oil and water. They don't mix. Love is not boastful. It's not arrogant. It's not self-seeking. And so that's straight from First Corinthians 13. So yeah, I think that there is, if we're going to be loving, then those other things just don't fit. They don't work. Because love isn't a feeling. Love is not just an abstract idea. Love isn't just something that's shared between, two people of the, opposite sex who decide to get married and, make a family together. That's not love. That's romantic love. Certainly love is involved in that if you're going to be successful. But a lot of people get married for lust too, and not for love, and that bears
Yeah,
itself out.
sure.
So, I do think like part of the hard part of the challenge is our culture has kind of hijacked the definition of love. Um, and so we're just operating with a faulty definition. And we don't think about our relationship with our neighbor or our coworker in terms of love. We think about it in terms of neighbor or professional or whatever it may be, not in terms of love, of seeking the good of the other, of actually doing actions that lower myself and raise up the other. We don't often think about it in those terms because our definition of love is just wonky. Um, but yeah, I think that love is inherently humble, and I think that when we are proud and when we're arrogant, and even when we're covetous or when we're materialistic, that's all driven by pride as well. I think people see that, and it doesn't add up. Again, there's like an annoying kind of like things don't add up here because what I hear about this Jesus, this self-giving, this sacrificing person, and what I see in Christians, if they are covetous, if they're materialistic, if they're arrogant, if they're rude, like these things just they don't match. Something doesn't fit here,
Mm,
and yeah, so I think, but again, like kind of with love is something that doesn't just happen. Humility is something that doesn't just happen. You have to cultivate it.
right.
You've got to give the time to do that. Yeah, I ran into a guy tonight who at Sunshine Acres at dinner who has been serving here for 18 years. I had no idea he came here once a week and served. I've known the guy. I coached football with the guy. I didn't know that he was here with the kids, weekly, just giving up his time. He's got a family at home. He actually lives pretty far from here, actually really far from here now that I think about it. But he's here every Tuesday night. And I just thought, man, I had no idea about that was true of you. It makes sense because I know the guy and he's a humble guy, but that's love, right? Like he never told me that. I've known the guy for years. He never told me that. He's just here, laying his life down, loving kids, sharing his time, sharing the Lord, being a blessing. Um, and so I think when we do the opposite, when we're selfish and when we don't cultivate that, it's just like it's like things don't smell right. And some of us may feel that in our own lives. We go, yeah, something doesn't smell right about my life. It could be
Mm,
a love or a humility or obviously both because they go hand in hand question. Like, are you cultivating those things?
yeah. Yeah, that's I think that's good to think through. I think for all of us to be thinking through even our attitudes um to the people that we're trying to reach out to in our communities. I remember a couple things stand out to me as I'm processing through this with you guys. Kind of I'm doing it out loud, so hopefully bear with me here for a second. But we're being in high school. I went to Corona del Sol in Tempe, and I was in an English class. I remember the girl next to me, she had just gotten back from next door because she was LDS, and so they have seminary next door. And she asked me something about, I was asking her where she was. She said I was next door. I said, okay. So tell her I'm a Christian. And she said, can I ask you a question? Why do you guys have a bunch of classes all the time about how to essentially make us look like idiots when we talk to you? I just remember thinking like, that's not really what we're trying to do, I don't think. I think we're just trying to make sure that the gospel is clear to us so that we can speak it clearly. But I do wonder if sometimes that's the way it comes across, and that has to do with attitude. Um, I also remember a time where there was a guy who was a pastor who had a missionary come to his house, invited him in, and berated him about truth. And that missionary never came back. And I just thought, man, I've thought about that since and just thought, man, how how are we holding this gospel to people when they walk away from us and we do have a gospel conversation? Are they feeling loved, cared for, valued, even in a disagreement or a disagreement on belief, valued as people did, I think, when they walked away from Jesus? Truth spoken for sure, like the gospel shared, as Paul would do, again in Acts, but um, but not in a way that makes people feel like they're less than or idiots. Maybe in a way that makes them feel like I want to have another conversation with that person because there's something different here. I wonder if love makes people just from us would feel like there's something different about you. Um, and that's compelling. There's a compelling nature to that. And if that's the case, last question for you, Tyler, would be, if that's the case, I wonder if that flows from the reality that you mentioned from John 3, um, which is that the motivation from God to us was love. So like when we think about us being acted on by the Lord in salvation, it really does come down to redemption born out of a love for us by God that caused him to put things into place and movements into action, that and come really I mean essentially coming to our neighborhood by coming down from heaven and being a part of this world so that he might redeem us and save us from our sins. Like that is what makes the gospel so powerful, and I wonder if that's what makes Jesus so compelling. And I wonder if we should just continually think about redemption, our own salvation, to lead us to love and to lead us to humility. um I think you mentioned, as you're thinking about John 3:16, that it's not that God came down, um, God so loved the world, he loved me, he loved you. Um, it says he loved us. It didn't say he loved his own glory, although that's not true. Or he loved however. He loved us, which motivated him. I don't know. I just wonder if we can learn from that, from John 3:16 more than we do. We kind of take it as we write it on signs and we take it as a thing that we memorize. But is there something there, like in terms of just remembering that redemption and that motivation that could help us in our own conversations with others?
Yeah, I think it's, understanding how deeply we're loved by God, but not stopping there. Um, Understanding how deeply God loves those around us who were in the same spot that we were before the work of the Spirit in our lives. So it's, it's both. It's really soaking in the love of God. And, one of the ways that I find the Bible particularly helpful with that is if you read really, especially the Old Testament, just because it's a lot of, narratives, it's just a lot of stories. If you read it and just think about how relatable it is, how, these different things that are happening, um, you recognize those desires in your own heart for those evil things that people are doing. I mean, I even think about as simple as I was reading about Solomon and how he built the temple for the Lord, right? It took twice as long for him to build his own palace as it did for him to build the temple for the Lord. And I thought, how relatable is that that Solomon, like there's a good side of it where he wanted to build the house for the Lord, as his father David had called him to do, and as God had called him to do. Like he's faithful to do that, and there is so much, intentionality behind that. He builds the temple, but then he takes and and puts in twice, if not more, the resources into building his own palace.
Yeah.
And like how relatable is that? But God, and because of that, he filled that palace with concubines and wives who worshipped other gods, and his heart was pulled away from the Lord, and yet God remained faithful to him. You know, God remained faithful to his people, to his lineage. Um, like I think the more we read the Bible, we see how relatable the sins of people are. If we're honest, like, oh man, I want to do that in my life. I want to build, yeah, sure, I want to build the church, but really, I want to build my palace, right?
Yeah.
Like that's relatable, and God is faithful. God doesn't cast us aside. In fact, he came and he died for our sins so that we could be with him. So I think the better we understand that, and then also understand that that's his heart for my neighbor, and that the way that he wants to go after my neighbor is through me, probably or potentially or likely, and that he wants me to go in love also, just as he is pursuing me in love. He wants me to pursue others in love. I think those two things are important to understand, and I think it's where really reading our Bibles and being in community where we can hear those stories from other people as well is just so important. Um, to not neglect those things and be distracted by other stuff, because if we are, it's similar to like in your own relationships. If you're distracted in your marriage by a bunch of other stuff, work is crazy and kids are stressful and whatever else you have going on, and you neglect your marriage, you look up and you go, oh man, I don't even know you right now. Like what's going
Right.
on?
Yeah.
Who are you? Or you feel that disconnect. Friendships as well, that happens.
Hmm.
I think the same is true with our relationship with the Lord. If we don't pursue, cultivate an understanding of His love for us, and that understanding of our calling.
Yeah. If and to that end, if you're listening to this and you're trying to figure out how do I do that? How do I cultivate? Cultivate's a word that we don't often use these days because we're not. Some of us aren't gardeners. Some of you love to do stuff in your yard. If you're like me, I don't. But cultivate just simply means pay attention to and work on and watch grow and tend, that kind of stuff. Um, I would say if you haven't read the Bible through, do it and just ask the question, where do I see God's love here? I just think that's a great way to do it because I think if you're asking a specific question as you're reading the Bible, and asking the Lord to show you that, I think that you're going to see some of those things. There's also good resources out there that we'd love to give you if you have questions. There's a book called Love Walked Among Us that's really good. There's a book called Gentle and Lowly about Jesus that's really good, and there's others. So you can ask us those questions. But um, as you go out this week, just remember conversations with others lead to gospel conversations, just intentionally, friendships, and I'm praying that our motivation for those things are based out of love for others, not selfish motives, but just continually love for others as we go. Two more things to mention here. If you listen to this podcast, you can be the first ones to do this, I guess, on Sunday morning. When you walk into the building, there's a sign that you'll see. It's kind of propped up against the wall. It says one more. And it's kind of it looks a little bit like the postcards that we gave you. We have Sharpies there. If you grab a Sharpie and just write the first name of your one, don't write the whole name. Just write their first name. We want as a church just to kind of continue to keep that in our mind. So you can take that Sharpie, write someone's first name right on that piece of I think it's like a cardboard paper or something like that, but you'll see it when you walk in. Be the first one. If you're the first one to write it, come tell me. I want to know who the first one was that wrote a name on there. The other thing, we have the One More podcast with Peter and I. It came out this past week, Monday, and we'll have another one in a couple weeks. Lastly, I'm going to say this: if you want to hear Tyler, this is the way to do it for now. So keep listening to this podcast, and hopefully you're finding value in it. Tyler, I'm grateful for your heart of love for others, modeling that at Sunshine Acres. I think as you were talking about the guy that you saw today, um, like you're doing that same thing. You've been doing it at Duo, and you're doing it now more fully. So we're grateful that we got to send you out this past week, and I'm really grateful that we get to continue to talk on these weekly basis. And if you're listening to us, that you guys get to hear Tyler some more. So anyway, thanks for all your work. Thanks for this first week at Sunshine Acres. Maybe next week we can hear a little bit more about how your first week went, and just check in with you. So grateful for you,
Yeah.
man.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
same. Thanks for taking time away from the retreat. I know what happens up there. So right now you're missing out on some good times to have this conversation. So thank you as well for making that sacrifice.
We're gonna yeah, we'll keep laughing up here when I hang up, so it'll be good. Um, um, everybody, I'm looking forward to seeing you Sunday, and we will chat with you soon. See
All
you,
right,
everyone.
see ya. Yep, see ya.